I'm okay predicting games, but to predict what other people are going to select, I kind of shy away from that. Like, who's going to win the Heisman Trophy? Well, I don't know what people are going to vote on. So when it comes to that, I think if people are looking at impact on the team, if people are looking at just playmaking ability, and if he continues to play at this level, then I believe that he could or should be selected to go to New York City. On the other hand, for those people that will just look at bottom line statistics, there's obviously no way he can make up ground statistically on other players. But if you look at the impact on the team, so far, so good. And he may warrant a trip to New York City.
It's funny to talk about, Mark. I mean, to your point, it's hard to think about a kid that's played 7 legitimate quarters, maybe even, I mean, 6.5, and think that he's a Heisman candidate. But I had talked to and had seen some odds that I guess he's the 6th highest in terms of the odds. So I think the one thing to think about is I think this year that we've seen, there hasn't really been anyone that's come out and just taken it, right? I think Bryce Young and Matt Corral are probably the 2 leaders right now. Then you've got the running back Bijan Robinson from Texas, and then certainly probably Kenneth Walker III from Michigan State right there. But other than that, there's not really been anyone that's came and seized control of it. So number one, the track record that Oklahoma has had at the quarterback position gives him an advantage. And I think number two, the big games that he's had over the last 2 weeks, I think the national stage kind of helped, obviously, against Texas, and then the way he played this past week. I mean, he doesn't have he doesn't have the stats, but he does have in really 2 games, not even a game and a half, 9 touchdowns accounted for in just that game and a half. So if the stats, to your point, Mark, aren't there. However, if he continues to play well, the stats can come. And I think the one thing that he might have to his benefit, Mark, is these last 3 games against Baylor, against Iowa State, and then against Oklahoma State, and then certainly the Big 12 championship game, if Oklahoma's able to get there, gives him that stage if he plays well. And I think everybody likes the story, just in general of I mean, not necessarily anything against Rattler at all, but just specifically a true freshman getting at a place like Oklahoma, being able to play early on. First true freshman to make a start since I think Cale Gundy in 1990. Before that, I think it was 1985, Jamel Holloway. So I think the story in itself kind of lends itself to him possibly making it up there. But he does does have some work to do. But I think that just where the country is at from a Heisman perspective, and I think the one thing that he has going for him is Herbstreit was pubbing him big time on the broadcast. I don't know how much you watched of the broadcast, but he made mention to it a couple of times, even so far as saying that he's a Heisman candidate right now. So I think those things help him, kind of nationally. So it'll be very interesting to see how this goes if he continues to play at the level that he's playing at now. Specifically, looking at the amount of time that he's played, he's already got about. And when you look at just kind of looking at the attempts, so Spencer Rattler has 175 attempts on the season. Caleb Williams has 59 attempts, almost half the amount of yardage through the air that Spencer Rattler had, and like I said, in just those amount of attempts. So he's much. I think he's much more efficient than Spencer Rattler has been. So. Yeah, and he does have the opportunity. The good thing, I think, for those that want him to get there, I think the good thing is he does have opportunities against 2 really subpar defenses over the next couple of weeks to get maybe caught up, so to speak, in some of those statistical categories.
You hit on an interesting point with Kirk Herbstreit in particular, but also other national and popular college football analysts jumping on this narrative, having their analysis of the play, but also the storyline is interesting, and that this is not an objective process. These are people voting that are biased, that Some of them do extensive homework and take it extremely serious. Others, frankly, do not. They've got a credential, they've got a Heisman vote, they cover Washington. And I'm not, of course, picking on anyone particular that writes for the University of Washington. This is just random. They write for their team. They go to those games. They hear whatever they hear nationally or outside their conference. And if it strikes them as, oh, I better keep an eye on this Caleb Williams, or Herb Street says that he's amazing. Oh, yeah. And they watched a couple highlights and he's suddenly on their radar versus all sorts of different perspectives on it. It would alarm people that take college football serious to know the lack of accountability, the lack of research, knowledge, insight that some people that have the authority of at least having a Heisman vote in particular take.
Mhm. No, you're absolutely right, and I think, and one of the other things to keep in mind here as, as his, counterparts, I guess, so to speak, and I think, obviously, I think we would agree that Bryce Young and Matt Corral probably are 1 and 2 right now. I think the thing also going for him is Bijan Robinson has the 2 losses. They're off this week, and the recency bias is always there. Um, and I think the losses, and I don't put as much into this as it because this award has really kind of turned into the best player on the best team, more than maybe necessarily the best player in college football overall. So I think the losses that Texas has had is going to hurt them. Then they come back and they go to Iowa State their next game, so that will hurt. I mean, Kenneth Walker for Michigan State. I mean, it's just a tremendous story for him, but overall for Michigan State, no one thought they would be anywhere close to where they're at now. But they've got a couple of really tough games coming up, specifically against Michigan. And do they like play Ohio State, or is it just, or maybe is it Penn State coming up? Anyways,
They will have Ohio State. I don't know exactly what the
yeah.
date is, but he's going to have to face Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State.
So like,
Out of the last 5 games of the year. Yeah.
yeah, so the opportunity's there, in terms of him inserting himself into the conversation. So it's crazy to think about a kid that just, 2 weeks ago wasn't even going to see the field hardly at all, and then now he's being talked about as a Heisman Trophy candidate. But I think based on what you had said, Mark, just kind of from a media perspective and just what he's getting is it will be something that could certainly happen.